necessity to do a second video in this subject of forgiveness, God's forgiveness. That God's love is forgiving. And I think the church have not fully grasped the depth and meaning of God's forgiveness. We haven't catch it. And that's the heart of the gospel. That's the heart of Christianity. Those are the good news. And we don't have a full understanding, a complete understanding of God's forgiveness, how God sees forgiveness, and how the Word of God teaches forgiveness. Now, we need to understand that God's forgiveness is unconditional. Why do I say that? First of all, the law of Moses, when I say the law, I refer to the law of Moses, focus on punishment. I mean, the law of Moses was a punishing instrument. But now, since the new covenant has been established and completed, the law has been removed. You no longer need the law of Moses. Now, of course, the morality, the morals of the law of Moses, the spirit of the law remains. Because the law of Christ is love. Love your neighbor as yourself, love one another. And God is love. That's the nature of God. The nature of God is to love. Love. Now, what do we mean that the law of Moses have been removed? What do we mean by that? Well, we mean the law puts conditions. So what we are saying that the conditions have been removed. That's what we are saying. That we no longer depend on law. We no longer depend on our works. We no longer depend on what we do. We solely and completely throw ourselves upon the finished work of Christ on the cross, which is the new covenant. We need to realize that, because law puts conditions. I will bless you if you obey to perfection. I will do for you if you live a holy life. You live 100% perfect, then I will do for you. And that is law. That's the law of Moses, because that's putting conditions. Yeah, that is putting conditions. The moment you put a condition, that's law. For instance, let me give you this an example. Let's say there's a believer that has cancer. Let me use another sickness. What sickness? Cancer. And is very sick, is about to die, and he has committed certain sins. He has committed. So let me tell you something. Will not God heal him because of his sins? Will God say, well, you have 98% of holiness, so I can't heal you? Well, you have 3 sins. You committed these 3 horrible sins. I won't heal you. For me to heal you, you have to be 100% holy. For me to heal you, So you see my point. That's putting conditions. That's putting conditions, and the law puts conditions, and that's a serious problem that is causing havoc in the church. Is something serious. Is something serious which is causing so much havoc in the churches. It's not helping the believers, because they have the wrong image, the wrong concept of God, the judging God, the punishing God. They're afraid of God. They don't dare to come close to God because they're afraid of God, though. You know, they are afraid of God. They terrorize. They in terror of God, because they do not realize that God is unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. They do not realize that grace means unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. They do not realize that. So we have many believers who are terrorized of God. They're afraid of God because they never seems to be enough. They never seem to measure up. They never seem to be 100%. So why should I approach God? If I fail so much? Why should I approach God if I fail in this area? Why? Why should I trust? When the Bible tells me, come to the throne of grace, notice it's called the throne of grace, not called the throne of judgment. Boldly means trusting, believing. So we put so much emphasis on doing. And the emphasis of the New Testament is believing. That's the emphasis of the New Testament. The righteous shall live by faith. Believing produces the doing. But we have it backwards. We want the doing to produce the believing. Believing produces the doing. We need to believe the grace of God. We need to believe the unconditional love of God. And that will take care of itself, the doing. Now, the law is punishment to the sinner. The law is punishment to the sinner, but grace is forgiveness to the sinner. Love takes no account of evil, which means that love does not accuse, love does not judge, love does not punish. Why I dare to say that? I dare to say that because that's the meaning of forgiveness. Forgiveness means I drop the charges, I don't accuse you no more, I don't condemn you no more. That's when it was said with the case with the woman that was caught in adultery. Jesus could have stoned her, but he didn't do it. Say, I do not condemn you, go and sin no more. But which one comes first? I do not condemn you. But empower her to live a life of sinning no more was, I forgive you. I do not condemn you. So the emphasis was in, I do not condemn you, because that produced the holy life. Because I don't think that woman went and committed adultery right 1 hour after Jesus forgave her. I don't think so. After seeing the display of Jesus' forgiveness, after seeing how powerful the forgiveness of Jesus is, we need to realize what God's forgiveness is. And so we can forgive others also. You may say, but it's so hard to forgive that other person. They hurt me. They mistreat me. They are like enemies to me. They hate me. They did something to a loved one. They hurt me. They and so on. But if we continue in this, if we have this image of the punishing God, of the judging God, of the God of the law of Moses, if we still have that image, it will be hard for us to proceed in a spirit of forgiveness. It will be very hard, because the Bible says, forgive one another just how God has forgiven you. So we are called to forgive how God has forgiven us. How has God forgiven us? He simply dropped all the charges against us. That's what God did. He dropped all the charges. He canceled the debt. So when we see that, then we can do the same with others. You see, it may not be easy, but by the grace of God it's possible. By the grace of God it's possible. And love is forgiving. Not forgiven, forgiving. Love forgives. The Apostle Peter said, love covers a multitude of sins. Notice it says a multitude. It doesn't say one sin, two sin, three sin, four sins. It says a multitude. How many times should I forgive my brother who offends me during the day? Unlimitedly. 360 something times per day. So you see how profound the forgiveness of God is, and the calling for us to forgive others. I mean, it is something deep. Once we see how God has forgiven us, we just forgive others. We say, hey, God has forgiven me so much. I mean, God has been so merciful to me. So spontaneously, and as a result, I'll be merciful to you. I'll forgive you. Forgive you. Now, it's interesting that many people, somebody tell me today, like, oh, you have to be ready for the Lord's return, because if you're not ready, you're going to go to hell. I was like, my God, what kind of image of God these Christians have? What kind of image? I mean, they live in a constant fear, constant terror. They live, my God, because they see in the punishing God. God is a punisher to them. And God is not a forgiving Father to them. God, they don't understand God's forgiveness. They don't realize that all their sins have been blotted out, erased. That God has dropped all the charges against us, past, present, and even future sins. Everything has been forgiven. I mean, it is hard to believe that. So that's why we need to see it by revelation. Because it's hard to believe it. I mean, that you may say that's too good to be true. That God simply dropped the charges. God simply erased my sins. I mean, that is hard to believe in, and that's too good to be truth. But it's possible. That's how love is. Love is forgiving. It's crucial we understand that, because if not, we're going to live life's torture. We're going to live life tormented. We're going to live life afraid of God. We're going to live lives with the wrong image of God. Oh, God is there. I mean, God will discipline you. God will, with some kind of sickness or something. And I even don't know what to say. Because it's like many of God's children have the wrong view of the Father. Yeah, they have the wrong view of the Father. And that's why I always go back to the parable of the prodigal son. You want to know the true character of God? Go and study the parable of the prodigal son. There you see a forgiving father. Even the elder brother that stay outside angry, the father goes out to him. He goes out to him in forgiveness, grace. We need to understand what grace means. Grace, essentially, first of all, grace means forgiveness. No condemnation, release from guilt, no accusations, no finger pointing. I mean, it's like God doesn't accuse you no more, because there's no law. The law is removed. No more law of Moses. Do I mean that we should be immoral? No, I do not mean, because that's not the spirit of Christ. You understand what I'm saying? That's not the nature of Christ. So it's like, I always use this example, because you need to realize what the law is. The law is demands. And when we place demands on people, law, that makes them sin. That's incredible. You see? So the more demands you give, the more people sin. Now that's shocking, I know. But you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 56. The power of sin is the law of Moses. The power of sin is the law of Moses. In other words, law makes people sin. The law is not bad, but when you give law to people, that makes them sin. I mean, it's a paradox, but that's what the Bible teaches. The law makes people sin. Unbelievable, but that's how it is. Now, when you teach and preach to people the grace of God, that will cause them to fall in love with God, and grace will produce fruits in them. I mean, you don't tell a mango tree, a good mango tree. You don't tell a good mango tree, produce good mangoes. You don't have to, because it is the nature of the tree to produce good mangoes. It is nature. So you have to put emphasis on the identity of the good mango tree. You don't have to be telling the good mango tree, produce good mangoes, produce good mangoes. You don't have to be telling a Christian, do good works, do good works, do good works. That's the nature of the Christian. That's the nature of the believer. It is his identity. So the problem with law giving is that it makes people sin. And it puts the emphasis on man's doing instead of putting our eyes on Jesus. But when we preach radical grace, I'm going to call it how it is. Extreme grace, because it's extreme. Those who see it by what it is will not abuse it. I mean, how can you abuse God's grace? You can't abuse God's grace. You can't abuse God's mercy. You can't abuse God's forgiveness. You just can't. You can't. If you are abusing it, you don't know what grace is. You don't know. You don't know what grace is. And grace means unconditional forgiveness. May the Lord open our eyes. May God give us revelation. May God give us understanding. May God give us clarity to see the full meaning of the grace of God, which is forgiveness.